Welcome, listeners, to another exciting episode of the Cymarshall Law Show. Today, we have a very special guest with us, someone who embodies the spirit of creativity, passion, and dedication. Please join me in welcoming Toney Jackson. Toney is not just an artist, he's a force of nature. From his early days as a hip-hop MC in New Brunswick, New Jersey, to his current role as a fourth-grade teacher in Hackensack, New Jersey, Toney has always been a beacon of inspiration. He's a man who wears many hats: a teacher, an author, a poet, an illustrator, and a performer. But above all, he's a storyteller who uses his words to ignite a love for learning in his students. His journey is a testament to the power of art and education. A Rutgers University alumnus, Toney has been recognized by the Academy of American Poets and has won several poetry slams. His work in the classroom, where he integrates hip-hop and poetry to engage his students, has been featured on Microsoft Education's YouTube page. But Toney's influence extends beyond the classroom. He's an author and illustrator whose books provide invaluable resources to parents and teachers. His poems, raps, and songs are as fun to recite as they are to read, and they reflect the diversity and complexity of our society. Toney's commitment to justice and love for learning are at the heart of everything he does, whether he's creating TikTok videos, working on his children's books, or being featured on getcaughtreading.org. Toney is always striving to make a difference. So get ready for an enlightening conversation with Toney Jackson. We'll delve into his journey, his work, and his passions. We'll explore how he uses his art to inspire his students and how he continues to evolve as an educator and artist. Stay tuned, because this is an episode you won't want to miss. Welcome to the show, Toney. What's going on? What up, Toney? What up, what up, what up, what up, what up?
Peace, man. Peace.
Yo, thank you for coming through, brother. We appreciate you.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely, man. It was an honor to be invited. So thank you.
No doubt, no doubt. Let me just cut off this beat.
Got you.
All right, all right.
Feeling that too.
Thank you, brother. So let's get into it. Can you take us back to early 2000s when we were doing shows together in New Brunswick, New Jersey? What are some of your most vivid memories from that time?
Man, it's funny you mention that. So I remember, this isn't going like in order, right? But I remember walking in front of right, it must have been right on College Ave. And I don't know if it was after a show. It must have been after a show. And I remember you and Pumpkinhead were just chilling, like walking as me and Kyle were walking forward, y'all walking the other way. And we stopped and we built right there. And I remember just, meeting each other as MCs, kind of talking about what we were on. And that is like cemented in my head. Like I can picture it really well. I don't remember the whole conversation, but I feel like Pumpkinhead was like kind of out front. He was like, "This is my man, Cymar." And I remember from there everything else. Like, there were a bunch of shows that we were like both on, or we would see y'all, whether it was that college or somewhere else. But that's one that's firmly implanted in my brain, man.
I love it. I love it. So I'm glad you brought up Kyle. I interviewed Kyle a couple weeks ago. And for the listeners who don't know, Kyle Raps was in a group with Toney Jackson. Toney Jackson, formerly the artist known as Zach Lost. Do you still go by Zach Lost at all?
You know what? I as of like 2020, I started going by Zach again. Once I started rhyming, a lot of the raps that I was doing from like up until about 2020 was just stuff that I was writing for the classroom largely. So I was, every now and then I'd write my own stuff, but I wasn't recording. And so 2020, I started put the Zach hat back on.
How did your experiences with Kyle, or just in a group in general, shape your experiences as a solo artist?
So my experience in a group heavily shaped who I am as an MC. The great thing about being in Thought Breakers with Kyle was that we both had a lot um, that we shared in terms of common interest, in terms of things that we enjoyed aesthetically with regard to hip hop, with regard to messaging. But we both brought something unique in terms of our style, in terms of our cadence. And so getting to see him at his best at that time, and we were both growing MCs. So getting
Right.
to see him growing and developing, and when he would have a really really dope verse, it would inevitably push me. And so I
Right.
think that one of the best parts of having a partner or being in a group, if it's somebody that you're like-minded with, is that it pushes you to be better. So I think I was built a lot up as an MC by and it wasn't like we were battling or anything like that, but just going back and forth on like, okay, we're both going to have a verse on this. We're going to be, trading fours or something like that. So I
Right.
know mine has to be really dope because he was such a dope MC himself.
Right. Right. You guys met at Rutgers, right? Or
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. He and Scotty T, who's a phenomenal poet, in his own right, they were doing what they called I think it might have just been called Verbal Mayhem at the time, but it was like Poet Club, and it was like a spin on Fight Club, and so I went to that, and it was the first time I had been. I might have been to one or two open mics in other places, but I really just came into it at college as something that I saw like, oh, now I have access to this, a lot more because I wasn't driving at home. It was nothing happening, popping off at Hackensack. But at school, it was, there was the open mic and I saw MCs and I got to spit and they approached me and they were like, yo, that was dope. And I was like, y'all are dope. And it was one of those like I was like, you're gonna do another one of these? I'm there.
gotcha. So it might not have been much popping in Hackensack, but you clearly found a way to make waves in Hackensack. You've been a teacher there for 21 years. That's crazy. How has your how has your journey as an educator evolved over the years?
So yeah, so I've been teaching. They have me down as an employee of the Hackensack Public Schools since 2003 because I took on a bunch of extended sub positions. And then I got my own class in 2006, right? So that's when I started as a full-time teacher. But
Gotcha.
when I first got into the classroom, it was off of what we were doing as the Mayhem Poets. So again, it's myself, Scotty T, Kyle, and at the time, Lindsay Halliday, who's an amazing poet and actress. And so we were going into schools and doing workshops in theaters and talking with, everybody from little kids to college students. And as we did that, I noticed that I loved more and more the education piece of it. I
Mm,
loved, everything about the literacy aspect and working with kids. And so when I had the opportunity to substitute, I said, "Oh, this is why this feels good." And so
mm,
when they offered me a position to come on full time, I at first I was a little hesitant because it's that as an artist and at the time as I don't want to say a struggling artist, but as an artist who was had to have another job in order to support myself,
right.
it was it's a thin line between saying, am I giving up the dream, if you will, of being an MC and doing music full time in order to take this full time job. And I had to grapple with that a little bit. But I realized that what I loved doing at that time was working with kids, it was the education piece. And I figured I could try to bring all that hip hop with me into the classroom. And so I started just, rapping when I could with my kids. And over time, it's evolved into a part of my pedagogy in the classroom. And so now that's where I am today, where I feel like it's the best of all worlds for me.
So that was a perfect segue into my next question, which was I know you studied visual and performing arts at Rutgers. And how has your background influenced your approach to teaching? But you just started to go into that with your kids in hip hop. Can you talk about that a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's that the creative was always one of the most important pieces to me. No matter what curriculum you give me, no matter what directives I get, there always has to be a piece of creativity that I can put into it and that I can try to bring out of the kids. And so that's definite, that never left. So even though I may not have been, people would say, okay, you have a BFA, and then I went alternate route into teaching, but everything that I use to create paintings, to come up with, different ideas for something interesting, to write songs. All of that is with me in the classroom as I'm trying to make a math lesson dope, or as I'm trying to, see how I can bring reading alive to the kids. So that is just that piece of being a creative, whether it's, the primary focus of what I'm doing, or whether it's an aspect of what I'm adding into something I'm doing.
Got you. Is it easy for you to see, even though they're only in the fourth grade, if certain kids kind of step forward more than others? Like they it almost feels like they're destined to be an artist. Can you tell that already, or is it too hard?
I think that's a great question, man. I can see it. I see it in some. I have to be careful with this because I definitely have some students who have already embraced that creative aspect of their personality. Whether it's, they like to write songs, they like to make up dances, they like to write books, they like to draw. All of those things can be present. But then I'll also have some students who are just creative. They might just have a ton of charisma, and the way that they phrase things is really creative, or they just have off the wall thoughts. So I would say, as their teacher, I could tell you a handful of students each year that I would say, I think if you trace their path, they're probably doing something creative now, right? Whether it's as a hobby, or whether it's something that they're trying to get into full time. I definitely have the students that I think I see, that I have seen that seed in them now, and
Got
and that's not to say that the kids who may not have sparked there with me, or maybe it's a seed and it's just incubating until that next teacher hits it, and then they're like, okay, now it blooms. But I do feel like I see it sometimes. Yeah.
That's cool. I like what you were saying about the kids, how they have those interesting, crazy thoughts. I was on your page and I saw one of your kids said you're making a book with them, and they said they were going to make their book in black and white like the 90s TVs. Do you remember
Yeah.
any other like wild things your kids have said to you over the years? Like anything that stands out that you're like, wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because there's some kids who will just drop one-liners. There's some kids who think differently overall. And I had one student who, now he reached out to me as he was getting ready to graduate, I think from high school, and he's an MC. And so he was like, man, I remember, like, he used to, I remember he, would try to battle me a couple of times in the class. He got to rap on stage at one point. But he would walk around with this air of just wisdom and knowledge that seemed like it had to be just coming through him from somewhere else. And
Mm,
so, when he would speak, although it would be sometimes it would be kind of funny, you could hang on to some jewels that he would say and be like, "Yo, where do you get that from?"
yeah.
Um, that was my boy Idris. But one student one time said to me, I try to write these down and I don't usually get it, but this one sticks in my head. Um, she said to me, Mr. Jackson, um, just out of nowhere, Mr. Jackson, you're a cop. And my eyes just like popped. And as a teacher, you're thinking of like, how am I going to address this, right? Like, what's my response going to be? And so I just stared at her. And as I'm getting ready to say, she said, "Yeah, you're a cock. Look right here." And she had a sheet with like the Chinese zodiac, and she was like, "Yeah, because you were born this," and I was like, "Oh yeah," and I just tried to completely play off any kind of shock from my end. But I was like, oh, okay, all right, little rooster. Yeah, you could.
Yeah.
That
Shout
was
out
the
to the
end.
year of the rooster.
For
Maybe
real.
I already know. So you have a Master of Education in Differentiated Instruction from Graceland University. Can you share how this specialization impacts your teaching methods?
Oh, absolutely. And I'll say this, just to be transparent, when I first got into teaching, I was just about, the job, like trying to do well, trying to be the best teacher I could be. And when I met who would be my future wife and another friend of ours, I would listen to them speak about what the next step would be. Oh, are you going to go back to school? Are you going to get another degree? And I'm like, that's more work. You know what I mean? I feel like I know what I'm doing. I'm learning as I go. But they started talking about the pay scale, and they said, yeah, you have another degree, you move this way on the pay scale, and so it's important to do that because you can, you increase your income.
Right,
And that blew my mind. I didn't realize it years in as a teacher. I didn't realize that there was potential for that. So honestly, I found a program that fit with something that I wanted to do, but also that was affordable. And
right,
so I found that I did it. And differentiation, it was a blessing to be able to get into that because I just wanted to kind of move up the pay scale, but to have the invaluable tools of differentiation to say, okay, these students are, if you have them all going for the same goal, you have to recognize that there are differences within each of them. And so
right,
some of the struggles that one may have, they may need to see something in a different way. They may need to show you they understand in a on a platform that's different from another student. And
right.
so differentiation is something that has been key to me through every year that I've been teaching, and is always present in the classroom and in my classroom practice.
I love that answer. It's a perfect answer. You can't really get better than that. So you've been recognized by the Academy of American Poets. How did that recognition influence your work, both as a poet and as an educator?
Well, you know what? It happened in college. I had one class that was a poetry class, and there was a competition with the work that we were already doing. So the teacher just said, you can submit your poems. And so one of the poems that I submitted, received that recognition. And I thought it was dope. I mean, at that time, I was just discovering slams. So honestly, I was much more interested in winning a slam than, having the certificate, because the slam, I could see how I could parlay that into something else. Okay, then I'm going to come back. If it was a weekly thing, I'll come back the next week and then I'll try to defend that, right? I'll see who else I'm going up against or
Right,
what other poets did I connect with. But it wasn't until years later, it was something that was nice, honestly, to put into a bio. It was something nice for the resume. And the more that I have matured as a writer and grown as a writer, the more I think on it, and I'm like, man, you know what? I would love to have had a conversation with myself at that time as the writer I am now, because I remember the poem that won. I remember the poem that won, and I feel like I could, if I were to listen to that poem now and talk to myself about it, I'd be like, okay, well, where are you going to go from here? What's
mm,
what's something different that you're going to try? What did you do in that poem that you feel like you could grow and change and do more of as a writer? So yeah, long story long, I mean, it was an honor, and it's cool to think back on it. But I think now so much more of what I appreciate in terms of recognition comes from um, conversations with other poets, conversations with other MCs. There are some comments I've gotten on Instagram that mean as much to me as that certificate from the American, Academy of American Poets.
mm. So if you were to battle the old you versus the new you, are you saying the new you would destroy the old you? Is that fair?
Oh man, as politely as possible. As politely as possible. Yeah, man. I mean, and I think about that too when people talk about new MCs and like I understand the love for the golden era, for the 80s and the 90s. And that is still what I am the most affected by and what I have, such a deep nostalgia for and a love for. It just sounds good to me too. But when I think about young MCs now that get a lot of hate and a lot of flack, I just think about the MC that I was back then, and all of this growth has been crazy. So, to know what I've learned over the course of those years, I'm like, look at you don't know where these kids are going to be in a couple of years. So you can you can have your opinion about whatever it is, but recognize that growth is possible, change is possible.
Who's your favorite MC teacher?
Oh man. Wow, that's a great question. Okay, I have to go with Dr. Chris Emden,
Mm,
um, dopest MC with a PhD.
mm,
He is the founder, like the originator of the formal idea of hashtag hip hop ed. And
mm,
so hip hop ed now is it's a whole movement because it explores and builds on and uses that pedagogical approach of incorporating not just rap music but hip hop into the classroom, into communities, and and instilling it in teachers, instilling it in students so that all of the best aspects of what hip hop is come through and live. And
mm.
so, I have immense respect for him. I've gotten to work with him on a couple of projects, and he's a poet. He is an MC. He does some modeling. Like he's definitely a Renaissance cat. So I would say he's like at the top because he's like a mentor to me. Um, J Live, J
Mm.
Live definitely is up there too. And then there's a lot of people who are MCs that are like teacher adjacent. Like Talib is one of my favorites. I know his mom is a teacher, and
Mhm.
so like I see all those connections, and every time I hear about teachers that are MCs, I get excited.
The first brother you named, can you say his name one more time, please?
Yes, absolutely. Dr. Chris Emden, Emdin.
Do you know anywhere online where we might be able to hear any of his stuff?
Oh, absolutely. I think what you'll find mostly from him is, like he's written books, he's written essays, so you'll see those. But oh, one of the dopest things I've seen from him, and you can look this up. There's a publishing company called HMH, Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, and I do some work with them. Dr. Mden has as well. He brought in Loaded Lux into a high school and did a whole lesson about how to write a rap where, he and Lux were getting those students, whether they were rappers or not, to create their own persona and turn that into a verse. And that's really, really powerful. You can find that on YouTube. But
Mm.
yeah, if you look up Chris Emden, how to write a rap, that'll pop up with Loaded Lux. And he's got a couple other things out there too. Like his book, the book that I love is for white folks who teach in the hood and the rest of y'all too. I think that was the first book that he did that like got a lot of acclaim. Yeah. I could go on and on.
For the listeners who are not into, because we have a wide range of listeners over here at the Cymarshall Law Show. So
I
for the
believe it.
listeners that are not into independent or underground hip hop, Loaded Lux is a very prolific underground battle rapper. So for him to do that work with Chris was awesome.
Oh
Sounds like it.
yeah.
I
Oh yeah.
definitely got to check that out. So, your books provide useful resources for parents and teachers. Can you share some key takeaways you'd like your readers to gain from your work?
Definitely. So one book that I wrote is called I'm Jack, I'm Black, and I wrote it after uh George Zimmerman was acquitted of killing Trayvon Martin. And I noticed that a lot of the think pieces that were being written were criminalizing and demonizing black bodies and black style and like well the way he was walking and the fact that he was wearing a hoodie as if those are reasons why it would be okay for somebody to immediately put criminality on somebody. And so I wrote a book that is very short, and I tried to write it intentionally for the youngest readers that I could possibly get the message across to. So, like, think kindergarten age. And the idea is just that black is beautiful, even though some people may um, put negative thoughts on it. Those thoughts don't change who you are. They don't make your black less beautiful. And so that's one of the things that I try to distill down, which can be really really difficult. I'm used to trying to make bars that are as clever and tricky as possible sometimes. So it was kind of nice to have the challenge of trying to use as few words as possible and get it across.
I love that answer too. You're doing good at psychically knowing what my next kind of questions were, because next I was going to say your books reflect the makeup of society with
Mm.
diverse characters and topics. Why is this representation important to you?
There you go. Yeah, I mean that's it. I'm trying to, especially now that I have children. And I at the time I had students, right? So at the time I had students, I was saying the same thing. Now that I am in front of kids and I have their ears, what can I say? I want to make sure that whatever I say and whatever I put out reflects exactly what you're talking about. And so now that I have children, I have daughters, I think about the same thing too. I think anytime that I start to write, and now that I'm back on my Zach Lost, I'm actually writing songs, and I keep thinking, okay, what is this going to sound like when Jilly is listening to this and she gets all the bars? So
Mm,
I try to make sure that what I have is has some substance to it.
mm. When you're not writing, you enjoy adding to your personal library. Can you share some books that have significantly influenced you?
Oh man, yeah. Oh, I love that. Okay, so this is something recent, but it's something that I really dug. I believe the title is Vibrate Higher, and it's Talib Kweli's book. Um, I believe it's Vibrate Higher. I
Got it
want to
back
say
there somewhere. It
let's
is vibrant.
man, we're right here.
One of those ones.
We're right here. That was a fantastic read. A great look in terms of the history of hip hop, but also in terms of a personal journey of growth. Um, what's something else that's powerful? Oh, um, man, the seven. You got to know. I'm sure you know this one.
Seven
Seven
habits.
Habits of Highly Effective People.
Yeah. That's it.
That's one that I continue to go back to. That's one that
Mm,
I continue to go back to. Read the whole thing. I wrote up a personal statement about myself, touching on each of those seven ideas, and I try to make myself go back to it every so
mm,
often and see if anything shifts, based on who I am.
mhm.
Um, those are two big ones.
Those are great ones. Those are great
Thank
ones.
you.
If the readers never heard of those, go out and get those,
Let's
please.
go, please.
So you're currently writing and illustrating several children's books. Can you give us a sneak peek into what we might expect?
Sure, sure. Yeah, the most recent one that I'm working on and that I'm trying to finish in a timely manner is based on a hero of mine. So I teach at a school that was named after a woman named Nellie Catherine Morrow Parker, Nellie K. Parker. And Nellie K. Parker was the first black teacher in northern New Jersey.
Mm,
And her story is really fascinating because she overcame um, extreme opposition, and not just opposition from folks in her own community, but that she had Klan members marching through our city. She had the Daughters of the American Revolution starting a letter writing campaign. She had her own neighbors coming out and protesting against her. Um, and even the black community, a lot of folks in the black community at the time felt that her family was like uppity. And so they felt that they thought they were better. And so folks from the black delegation at the time even came out and said, we don't know if this is the best idea. But she ended up, you know, despite all of that, going on to follow her dream of becoming an educator. And she taught for, I want to say, at least 40 years, not more than 40 years in Hackensack. And they eventually renamed Maple Hill School Nellie K. Parker. And that's the school where I teach. So I'm writing a nonfiction book of her life, and I'd say I'm probably about 60% of the way there. I'm working on the illustrations now.
That's so awesome. That's one of the greatest things you've said. Her story and the fact that you're doing that. Where's my
Thank you, man.
um so you also do artwork and illustrations. How does this creative outlet complement your writing and teaching?
I think one of the I think about that a lot actually, because as a creative, and this is something that I would throw back to you. Like I would love to talk to you about this at length sometimes, because I know you're a polymath, you're a multi hyphenate, and when you have an idea for something, when I have an idea for something, sometimes I don't know immediately what it is supposed to be, how it's supposed to exist outside of my head. And so the Nellie K. Parker thing, for example, I I think about that. I think it would make a great musical. And so in my head, I'm like, man, let me take a break from doing these illustrations and let me draft up some songs that would coincide with this, and that would fit and I could tell the story that way. So, for me, as a person who likes to do all those different creative things, sometimes I have to slow my roll and figure out, okay, this is what this is going to live as for now. I have to work until this project is done, and then if I need to do something another way, I can still explore that. So I know that you're asking the questions, but I would ask you, do you ever run into that where you have something and you're like, is this going to be a rap, is this going to be something else?
Yeah, that does happen to me. It usually ends up being a rap. um, but yeah, that is a good question to turn around and ask myself.
Mm.
Yikes.
And I say it too because I see so much of your design as well, and so to be in a place where there's so much going on, so much that you could potentially create and put out into the world, especially things that like your family is listening to, your family is wearing, like it's getting out there, like as a book, right? So yeah, well, I'm gonna turn the tables one of these days because I want to get you speaking at length about that.
So to speak at short about it, I think
Yeah,
when the idea comes to my head, it's pretty definite usually, and I just don't wait. I don't procrastinate. As soon as it pops in, I'm doing it by the next day or the next week. Literally, that's just how I am.
that's
Um,
powerful. That's powerful.
but this is about you.
Let's flip it back around. Flip it back.
So you are featured on Microsoft Education's YouTube page, which is huge in my opinion. I think in a lot of people's opinion. Can you tell us more about your experience with Hack the Classroom ISTE 2019 and maybe beyond?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, I'll say this: the when I look at what's happening right now, um, let me go forward and then go backwards, backwards, forward, and then backwards, right? So I did this commercial for Microsoft based on a friend of mine who I met at Rutgers, who was an actress, Lauren, and she said, or LB, and she said, I recommended you to this casting agency because they were looking for people doing interesting things with their job, whatever it may be, right? Chef, banker, whatever it is. And so because I was rapping in the classroom, she recommended me. They chose me. Boom, boom, boom. And then it turned into just they wanted to make this real person ad. And
Right.
so that was fantastic. But when I got there, I said, I didn't realize how much that company was doing with education. So I said, can you just plug me into somebody and they had a whole education department. I didn't realize that. Fast forward, I'm sure part of it was that they wanted to capitalize off of my face, being out there for the commercial. They brought me out to this one event called Hack the Classroom. And I got to present there. I got to, rap, to speak about myself as a teacher. And then I did that with them for a couple of years. I did a couple other events, one of them out in London. And, I continued to work with them on and off as I was teaching. And, to go back, when I first brought hip hop into the classroom, I wouldn't have expected everything that's come from it. But now I feel like it's one of those things that makes me know that I'm walking in my purpose. Because as these things pop up, as opportunities present themselves, sure, a part of it is, you can call it luck, you can call it who you know. But I know that for me, I first got that because someone saw something in me with what I'm passionate about doing,
Right.
hip hop
Right.
and teaching. And
Mm.
so I just recently, I don't know if I can't say the company right now because of, signing stuff, but I just did another job with a company, involving me teaching and rapping. And
Nice.
so, anytime those things come about, I some people, will hate, right? Like the first time that the commercial came out, people were like, this guy's so fake, this is phony, that's not those things don't even rhyme. This is no, this is cheesy, whatever. And I was talking to my daughter about this recently. No matter how much of that comes, sometimes we can focus on the one negative comment out of 100, right? And I definitely have had the times where I've done that. But when I'm able to look at the reality, the wider picture of the situation and say, I'm here for a reason. If there is somebody who said, wow, I got something positive from that, then I can't ignore the blessing of that for, somebody else who's just annoyed or frustrated.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, that's a long answer to it, but it definitely makes me feel like I am where I'm supposed to be. I'm not like settled in place and I still want to go other places and grow, but just in terms of what I'm doing, I feel like this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Absolutely. And when those people come that are kind of saw where you came from and then saw you get some type of great recognition and they start having bitter comments, it's usually because you got to a place they didn't expect you to get to and they don't know how to articulate their feelings, which could
Definitely feel that.
possibly be envy. So
Yeah.
keep on, brother. Keep on.
Appreciate that, man.
No doubt. You've adopted change as a mission and an identity. Can you share an instance where embracing change led to a breakthrough in your career?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, um, I came in, I taught second grade for 4 years. So just in a very literal sense, um, I was called up to teach fourth grade. And so for me, it involved uh, a lot of things I had to relearn. It involved, thinking about how I'm going to deal with, kids at this age. Are the same things going to work? I knew that it was going to be tough, but it's something that happens. It's something that happens with, especially with educators. You can get moved around, and so I think being able to embrace it made the whole experience better. If I was resistant to it, or if I went in kind of, upset and grumbling about it, I don't think it would have been as good an experience as it eventually turned out to be. So just saying, yes, I'm open to something new. I'm open to to growing myself. I'm open to widening who I can help in terms of students. Um, I feel like that was a big deal for me in terms of change.
Understood. So I meant to ask you this earlier. I don't want to forget it. So, as someone who's worked with a lot of children over the years, have you found some students that were harder for you to pull their creativity out? And this is something I want you to answer for teachers and parents who might be having this issue Are there certain ways you found you could pull out creativity in kids that were having a harder time bringing it out than others?
Yeah, it goes back to that question that we spoke about a little earlier in terms of what you see in some students, because
Mhm.
sometimes you won't see it. And I guess I can say it this way. As an educator, one of the things that I feel like I bring into any classroom setting that is an important tool is authenticity and
Mhm.
also a willingness to share myself with my students. And I
Mm.
think that when I do that, it helps them to, whether they think what I do is corny, whether they think it's amazing, they're seeing that I'm not embarrassed of who I am.
Mhm.
And, there's a level of pride that I have in what I do and what I love. And so
Mm.
I genuinely think that just having that as a standard part of, not just a classroom relationship, but a relationship with children, period. Letting them see your authentic self, and whether you're passionate about cooking. I mean, it could be anything. If it's, I love cartoons, and some of the cartoons I love, I've even had kids that thought, they might be corny. Right now, I'm talking. I'm in an elementary school, so you're like, oh well, kids must love cartoons, but some of them are like, like that's for little kids. Whatever. I'm showing you what I love.
Right.
And eventually, I found that that will help them to be more open to sharing some part of them. And that's what usually will make them more open if it's there, or if there's a place for it to, to try something creative.
I love it. So I know we both share a love of the X-Men 97 cartoon series.
Yeah,
Has
man.
any cartoon ever influenced you in general in the way you do things?
Man, I love that question so much. I feel like I have to think backwards for this. Because there's so many great cartoons now, and my daughter loves cartoons, so I'm watching a lot. I think Steven, there's a cartoon called Steven Universe, by created by Rebecca Sugar, and it was, I don't know when it came out, but they do such a good job of involving music. um it's like this radically diverse and inclusive, expansive, huge fantasy story that talks about growth and empathy, and probably has some of the best lessons delivered of any show that I've seen. So I'll
Mm.
say Steven Universe. Another one that's not too far away is, not from too long ago, is Craig of the Creek. I thought Craig of the Creek is a great one in terms of hitting with nostalgia from, that we recognize. Like, I feel like it appeals to kids. My daughter loves it. But I love it because it reminds me of when I was actually that age and the things that they do, and it shows their world as if everything they imagine is real.
Mm.
Um, Trying to think of what else. Anything comics was always really big. Um, I'm probably gonna have to like hit you up after this separately and give you like a list of all the things that that are there. I think DuckTales, the new DuckTales, there's a new version of DuckTales, that was brilliant. They did such a good job of weaving together all of the allusions to old Disney afternoon cartoons within it. Um, Mighty Max, let me say, okay, look, you got me on a roll now, man. There was a cartoon called Mighty Max back in the day, and Mighty Max was this kid that he put a cap on. It was like a magical cap, and um, it would transport him. And he had like this guy, Norman, who was this mythological, huge, bulky hero, but also went by names like Beowulf. So it connected amazing literature, and at the same time, it had the vibes and the problems of kids that were like, 10, and in the teens. And I thought Mighty Max did a really good job of combining literary illusion, real world deep, complex problems and just like comedy too.
I love that answer. I love that
Thanks.
answer. You do a lot of TikTok videos. How does this platform to engage with your audience? How does that help you? How does Let me rewind and ask the question.
Gotcha.
Like I know how to talk. How do you use this platform to engage with your audience and promote learning?
So with with the social media platforms that I'm on right now, I found TikTok was my favorite one for a while to create videos because it's really easy and quick to create a video, to throw some fun editing on it, and you can get something out really quickly. And so what I started to notice is I may have some students who find me on there, but but I'm not promoting it to them there. But I would create videos, save them, and then I would share it within a platform at school so they would have like, here's the ones that Mr. Jackson made specifically for school.
Right.
Um, I feel like lately though, like my following on TikTok is much higher than my Instagram followers, but I find that now I spend more time on Instagram because I'm more plugged into a community there of creatives that I vibe with. So there's a lot more MCs and producers that I'm sharing stuff with or I'm watching for to see what they're creating. And I think hip hop, like I said, 2020, I kind of got back into making hip hop music, to really being Zach Lost. And for the last 4 years, I think it's been more about Instagram because that's where I made a lot of those connections with folks that are doing it.
Gotcha. So if I'm listening to you say, I'm just looking at the questions at the same time. That's why I'm going like this. So I have two different. We're kind of at the end of the interview. I know you're kind of probably short on time, so I have one more serious question, then two fun parts of the interview,
Yeah.
which should take pretty quickly. So the last question really is, no, I have two last questions.
Okay.
So finally, if you could sum up your philosophy as an educator and artist in one sentence, what would it be?
Encourage students to be conscious consumers, constant creators, make mistakes, and grow.
Mm. Gotta give it up for that
Thank you, man.
one. And then lastly, what is next for Toney Jackson, aka Zach Lost? Any upcoming projects or goals you can share with us?
Yeah, man. For the past 4 years. So in 2020, I want to say it was 2020, because it was right when the pandemic started. I found this community online called Dominion Ciphers, and Dominion Ciphers was run by this cat named Lotus Luthor. I connected with him, and it was just folks sharing their work. And every week they would say, okay, this person had the best verse, or this person, won this. And so I jumped in and at first I didn't realize what was happening, but it was this competition over 26 weeks, and then they picked, a champion, and I was the winner of that season. They did several more seasons, right? So there's been four winners so far. I was the first one. But doing that, one of the prizes was that they would cut a 4-song EP, and so over the past 4 years, on and off, we've had a bunch of it done. We've said, okay, we got to get back because, they're going to do another season. So, I'm doing my work. I'm focused on education. Lotus and Black Adams and Quake Mob, they're doing their thing. So now we're ready. So on my birthday last year, Lotus flew up with his wife and they went to a performance that I did with a bunch of the songs, and so we got to build and actually do all that in person. Um, you know, do some interview, really chop it up, and now we're talking and we're like, listen, let's just drop it. So I would say within the next couple of months, it's dropping. We haven't put a date on it, but it's called Eat Your Idols. It's going to be right now a 4-song EP, and that should be the next thing that's coming.
Awesome. Where can people find you?
At He Rhymes with Me, no spaces. At He Rhymes with Me on TikTok, on Instagram. Um, um, yeah, I mean, and if you just put in Toney Jackson, Tony with an E, Toney, you'll find a bunch of my education stuff. I've got a lot of videos out there from different conferences and stuff like that. So you'll find me speaking and doing poetry that way. And then if you look for at He Rhymes with Me, you'll find a lot of verses, a lot of hip hop stuff, and then also some educational stuff.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. We love it. We love it. All right, so the fun parts. I'm just gonna ask you random questions. What are you listening to right now, musically?
What am I listening to right now? I'm listening to whatever is on my my workout play. Um, so a lot of like old school amp up songs. Um, but what's new that I'm listening to? Okay, I really like what's this young lady's name? Gosh. She had an album called Guts, and she was like nominated for like best new artist at the Grammys. People are gonna think it's wild because she's like a major, huge star, but oh man, I have to come back to that. But that anyway, the album is called Guts, and it's a fantastic album. Um, what else am I listening to? I love this cat, La Russell. I listen to La Russell stuff. I'll throw it on. And honestly, a lot of like lo-fi jazz, lo-fi hip hop. That's the stuff that I throw on if I'm just trying to, work and focus. Kamasi Washington, his album The Epic is it gets probably it's probably the album that gets the most spins of anything that I have.
Hmm.
Um, Trying to think what else. And then like, the people that I know, so the heads on Instagram that I'm following, like PONYC, the Pony NYC is a collective of amazing MCs who are all tied into New York. So like Cat Show Rock is an amazing MC out of Connecticut. Life is an amazing MC connected to New York, but he's living down in Florida. Um, uh, Royalty is like right over in the city. It's an amazing collection of MCs, and I love listening to all the creative ways that they just kill it, lyrically and otherwise. Um, uh, yeah, and then a lot of Miss Rachel, man. Any kind of like kid song stuff, I had that playing all the time for the little one. And I play her a lot of Michael Jackson.
Mm.
Um, a lot of Michael Jackson. Now, come to think of it, see, now I'm realizing I end up telling my smart speaker to play a lot of stuff, and what I usually say lately is, play the Stylistics, play Michael Jackson, starting with Human Nature, and then I'll do a list. Um, Sam Cooke, some good old stuff.
I love it.
The,
I love it. Change gonna come. We still
that's
playing
right.
it. um, who is your favorite actor of all time and actress of all time?
Man. Okay. So somebody that like affects me, I'm trying to think. I feel like it sounds like a cliche answer. Um,
As long as it's honest.
you got me thinking, man. Okay. Okay. Let me before I answer it. I'm not trying to like escape the question. I genuinely appreciate this because I think about as MCs how we are so often. And that's why when you ask the question about the cartoons, and what I'm watching, I really love that too. Um, I am often, and we are often so impacted by things outside of the genre and the culture of hip hop. And
Right.
so like there's performances that I've seen where I'm like, man, I love the way that they, like just live that character. I
Right.
love what they were able to do. Okay, so I will say for that, Denzel is definitely up there. I mean, he is the one. but I feel like it's a deserved title, you know? Um, in terms of actresses, who do I love? Okay, I'm gonna go left on this one, and I'm gonna go Meryl Streep because Meryl
Mm,
Streep has a couple of movies that hit me um like differently, right?
mm.
So like Prime hit me in a different way. Um Devil Wears Prada hit me in a different way, and the way that she is able to completely just disappear, and you don't even realize like that is her now. And these are like the classics, the standard bears. So that is what it is. But
I'll
it's
take
not
it.
broke, don't fix it.
There might be some people out there who haven't seen those movies. I don't think I've saw Prime.
Oh, Prime is one of them ones for me, man.
Like 10 out of 10 type flicks.
I wouldn't say 10 out of 10. I would say it was very affecting because of the situation in the movie. And because it's not that kind of interview, I won't go too deep into that. But I would say Prime is something.
Nah, I definitely want to watch it. What's your
um,
favorite movie of all time?
I'm so glad you said that, man. I would definitely say up there is in terms of rewatchability, I love The Matrix because I love the story that's told. I love the way that the story was told. But Waking Life is a Richard Linklater film, and I don't know if you're familiar with. He did a series of movie called like was it Before Sunrise, Before Sunset, and he's known for these movies where people are just the conversation is so real, and he creates these moments with the characters as they're talking. You just kind of like fall into what they're saying. But the movie Waking Life, I love because I saw it in college. I remember going to see this with Scotty T for Mayhem Poets, and I didn't know what to expect. The whole thing is done in rotoscoping, which is where all the scenes are like painted on, so it looks like this. It's live action filmed, but it looks animated.
Yeah.
So it is it's a person who is, in that stage where you don't know if they're awake or dreaming. And like you have your dream life and then you have your waking life, and it's explored all the way through. But every person that he comes into contact with as he's trying to figure this out has a different philosophical idea that they explore in a short conversation. It is so beautiful to watch, and there are so many of those. There's so many gems, it's almost unfair. So when I say it's my favorite movie, I mean I would say 10 out of 10 because you will inevitably walk away with it looking at something in a different way. There's so many things that they throw at you in terms of philosophical sides of different questions that you have to take something away and say, oh, that's interesting.
Thank you. That's exactly what I wanted to hear because I
Let's
could
go.
I could feel it coming off you. That is the movie I'm gonna go watch this weekend. I promise you that. Do
I
you know
need
where
I
I
need
can
you to
find
report
it?
back, man, please.
I will. Is it on like Prime, Netflix, or do I have to buy it for 5.99 somewhere?
Um, that I don't know. I own the DVD, so the only time I rewatch it, I throw it into my old Xbox and I rewatch it. So I haven't caught it on any of the streaming ones yet.
I'll find it. I'll find it. All right. Who is your favorite X-Men character?
I'm going with Cyclops. I'm going with
Mm,
Cyclops. Now there's so many ways that you could go with this, but I love that um, in the new series, which is just a continuation of the older series, they gave him the respect that he had in the comics. And I feel like the movies kind of took him away. They made him just like the pretty boy. They made
yeah.
him just like, you know what I mean? He was
Yeah.
just there as like a foil to Wolverine, and for them to have that, that back and forth. But I think they beautifully show how he has, and there's the whole idea of Professor X and Magneto, right? And how their relationship mirrors this imagined relationship between Dr. King and Malcolm X,
Right.
and they're two sides of trying to find a solution to help these marginalized folks.
Right.
And I feel like Cyclops in the cartoon now is a perfect illustration of what being in the middle of those two sides can do to you. And there's
Mm,
times where you see him really thinking like, okay, but Professor X is telling me about the goodness of of people in general and why we need to do these benevolent things. But at the same time, Magneto is right on so much of this. And you
right.
see him have that conflict and I just think that I'm not even talking about his powers. I think his powers are dope too. The fits are crazy, but just in terms of what he goes through and his growth and his exploration, I think makes him my favorite.
Gotcha. I love that answer. You are the first person I've ever heard say Cyclops, but I think that's because they weren't representing him right.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
But I love the answer.
Dig.
If you could pick one food from 2024 that smashed it more than any other food that you've tasted all year, what would that food be?
Oh gosh. That's a hard question for me, man, because we're some foodies up here, and sometimes it's like in the worst possible way. So we have our new obsession has been these crumble cookies, and crumbles is like just the crumble is the latest place to pop up with it was cupcakes a few years ago. Every place had like the fanciest cupcake. Now Crumble has these really expensive but incredibly delicious cookies, and we have a box upstairs. Um, I'm gonna have to give it to Crumble for that. And this is, mind you, I'm trying to get away from them. I'm trying to stop them. I'm trying to like cleanse right now. I'm trying to,
Sounds like you're throwing someone under the bus.
man, can I do both? Can I do both? Um, oh gosh. Yeah, okay, 2024. No, no, no. Scratch that. Love, Crumble gets both those. I'm going to go with when my students ask me what my favorite food is. I say two things. I say fruit because I love fresh fruit over anything, over any
Mm,
kind of cookies, any kind of cupcakes. Give me fresh fruit. I'm good to go. So
mm.
I'm going to say watermelon, a perfect watermelon, and I will also say a perfect slice of like $1.50 slice of pizza from. As soon as I get into Manhattan, there's like a little spot that I go to right around the corner from Port Authority. That slice is all I need. That slice is all I need. Give me $3, I'm good.
I love it. I love it. All I need, like Mary and meth. All
That's what I'm
right.
saying.
So we down to the last part of the interview. This one will go quick. I just name a word, a random word, and you just give me the first word that pops into your head.
That.
Are you ready?
No, oh, wait, wait, wait. I'm trying to shake the word orange out of my head because now it's just sitting there. Okay, go ahead when you're ready.
Galaxy,
Quest,
breeze,
ever flowing.
whisper,
Secret,
echo,
polyphonic,
mystery,
theater,
harmony,
shine,
journey,
truth,
spark,
fly,
twilight,
dawn,
and then lastly, serendipity.
grateful.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, this has been another exciting episode of the Cymarshall Law with my brother, Toney Jackson, aka Zach Lost. We love you, y'all. Until next time, peace, love, and positive energy. And we are out like that.
Peace.
Peace. Stop. Let me just